Hey everybody, in this video, I took some suggestions from the last video. So hopefully the audio is improved, and I'm going to be specific and just focus on the New York City image 12 verse 10 combination, and I'm going to give you my theory. This is actually going to be the first time that I'm publishing or speaking publicly to everyone about the theory and giving away my interpretation of it, and how it leads to a final location. I'm not going to be using the image, and I'm going to use very little maps or references of anything of that sort. It's going to be very straight and simple. However, it might be a little lengthy. I'm going to definitely try to keep it down from the amount of time I spent ranting supposedly in the last video. So let's get straight into it. Now I'm going to go through the verse in the way that we and by we I mean the community, because again, like, nobody has solved any of these things by themselves. It takes a team of people and a lot of suggestions. Even if they were in forums, you're going to get help from friends, you're going to get help from family, you can talk to strangers in the street and say, what do you think this looks like? So there was a lot of people that helped into building this together, but this is how we did it. um, Started with the strongest clue, and the clue that I, if not the strongest clue, but the clue that would give us the best start. And for me, that was or gaze north towards the Isle of B. The reason is because it says north and it gives us a name of an isle being literal. And again, I'm going to use literal definitions of every single word in this verse. I'm not going to tell you that an arm is a bridge or anything of that mess. Uh, Words being literal is a very big part of this puzzle being solved. If you notice, a lot of times people will get into a situation where they can't really explain what this clue means, so they change the word around to mean something else, or say it's a metaphor or something of the like. And this is why literal is not only literal words have worked three times in three, not three times, but have worked three solves. It is essential to figuring out these clues, because if it's not literal and these words are all just metaphors, and you know three vowels could be six vowels, or it could be six chickens, or it could be whatever you want it to be. This is what would happen if we started to just be nilly-willy with the definition of words and how they're spelt and how they're used. So now we go, like I said, from north of gaze north towards the Isle of B. The important things of these words: gaze meaning to look at something in awe and probably from a far away perspective, and far away would be relative to the situation that you're in, where you're standing and how you compare it. So just saying that it's something that's not in front of you, that you would maybe have to squint your eyes to see that something in the distance. That's how I take the word gaze, north being north, towards the Isle of B. Now, the Isle of B for us is Bedloe Island. I think it's the logical choice for a lot of people. Reasons being that Lady Liberty is obviously depicted in the image. It fits the immigration theme. There's not many isles, meaning small islands surrounded by water, in around New York City. They start with a B, historically or present. So this gives us Bedloe Island, and we know we have to be south of that. And so we get to our map. Let's see, we already zoomed in. If we were south of Bedloe Island, we have two choices, which is Staten Island right here, and we have south of Brooklyn, which is technically this area right here. So this is Bay Ridge, Diker Heights, Bensonhurst further down, and the Isle of B is right here. And I'll zoom out just so we can give a better perspective. So if this is north and we were south, we would be somewhere in this direction. Now I'm going to go obviously towards the Brooklyn route, and the reason why is because the next part of the verse that actually gives us some sort of a clue that we can work with is Rhapsodic man's soil. Or if you want to put it together with the words and context, it says, and see simple roots in rhapsodic man's soil. Rhapsodic man has always been speculated to be George Gershwin for many reasons. Even early on, before the Japanese clues, and even on before the interview with a close personal friend of Byron Price, it was suspected that it was Gershwin, and I believe after that it was pretty much solidified. And that helps us a lot because his roots, as far as his childhood roots and not his musical roots, are in Brooklyn. He grew up in a house which I believe is not too far away from Prospect Park. And that's good to keep in mind because not only do we know we're South and we know it's either Staten Island or Brooklyn, now we pretty much know it's Brooklyn just from these two clues in context with each other. So the next thing we're going to do is try to find the next clue because, again, a lot of these clues here are not going to be very specific. A whirring sound, cars abound. This could be anywhere. This could be not even in New York City if you wanted to go down that route. It's just specific if you use it in context with everything else. Just like in hindsight, all the other things that these verses were speaking about after we solved it did make sense. So we'll leave those alone. But the ones that do have these substance into it, we have to figure it out. And so we get to, although the sign nearby speaks of Indies native, the natives still speak of him of hard word and three vowels. Now, these lines all go together, and I think most people would agree. And what it's saying here is, now that we know New York City, and we're going to say the Indies native, we're sure that the Indies native is Hamilton. For obvious reasons, Hamilton is still so well known in New York City. There's so many things named after him all over the five boroughs. There's obviously the active play Hamilton. So this is Hamilton, and we're trying to find a sign that speaks of him. And we can find some signs, like I said, pretty much everywhere in New York City that have Hamilton written on it. So it's not a very specific clue. It does obviously narrow down places that don't have his name on it. So that helps in eliminating possibilities. But the next line is to give another suggestion of where this place is. Of him of hard word in 3 volumes. And not to be around the bush, it's Dickens. The reason why it's Dickens is because the word hard is capitalized to mean a title or a name. Word in three vowels. Now we could say, but what's a vowel? Why is it abbreviated like this? Why is it capitalized? Why? We do know that Byron Price has used literary quotes, literary references, references to authors, and so forth. And so far in this verse, we don't have any. So I'm going to suggest that this is it. The literary reference that he's using here is to Dickens. And not only is it to Dickens, it's to a book that he wrote called Hard Times. And it was actually not a book. It was written in a few articles. I can't remember the number, maybe 14 or 28 articles. In a new publication that he made called Household Words. 3 volumes is important because in order to get to the hymn and knowing it's an author and knowing something about 3 volumes, if you just did that search alone, you would get a list of authors, and also you would get the knowledge that 3 volumes was a writing style of early English writers. So they would write these books in 3 different volumes. And a good example, although it's not an early English book, is Lord of the Rings for this. So, and knowing that, saying, all right, so you have 3 volumes, you have Hard Word, you have Hard Times, and you have Household Words. And we're going to come back to Hard Times because I think Hard Times in itself, and it's just my opinion probably, has another clue into where they're speaking about. But just with that alone, if this line is suggesting that it is Dickens, and complete context of what the line is, or what these lines are suggesting, is that there is a sign that speaks of Hamilton, but the natives still speak of Dickens. And for me, when getting to Brooklyn and getting to South Brooklyn and having a few things that do have Hamilton on it, and I mean not a few, many, because there's exits that have Hamilton's name on it and so forth, street names and uh, Fort Hamilton, which is underneath the Verrazano Bridge, and so on and so forth. We have to differentiate which one this is, and that clue helps us. So it's saying that inside, or just the natives around it, or whatever the case is, they're speaking of Dickens. They're not strategizing wars, so it's not a fort. They're not talking about many things other than probably his literary works or his plays or something of that nature, and that screams high school to me. Now, to make this clue seem much more possible, or I don't really think you really need to. I think it really speaks to itself, since the fact it uses the entire line and all the clues within that line to solve it. But hard times is, if you just read the first paragraph or the introduction or what the book is about, it's about the setting, at least, is in a school. So this screams out that this is Fort Hamilton High School that they're speaking about, especially with everything else in context to this. I feel that Fort Hamilton High School would be a good match. And Fort Hamilton High School had been suggested for other reasons. I think at one point somebody has suggested that Byron Price went to Fort Hamilton High School, which is 100% untrue. I'm not really sure what the other reasons why they thought Fort Hamilton High School was a contender back then, but it's suggesting that this is something in the area, alongside other things too, because we still have the whirring sound and cars abound and so forth. Now, in the shadow of the great giant, I think, I'm not sure if I established in this video or in the last video, that this is the Verrazano Bridge. It's gray. It looms over the neighborhood of Bay Ridge. It's a descriptive thing to say shadow, because there's very few themes underneath the bridge. I just take it as, in these lines, as saying the shadow of great giant is Bay Ridge. So in Bay Ridge, find the arm that extends over the slender path, which we'll get into. You often hear a whirring sound, which will be the Belt Parkway, which, if we look at the map here, and I'll try to zoom in again here, the Belt Parkway is what is surrounding the Shore Road Park. Fort Hamilton High School is approximately right here. So if we know it was Fort Hamilton High School, and cars abound would match here to the Belt Parkway. The whirring sound being something that's man-powered, the promenade bike path, which has been there for a very long time. So, and everything in this video and all these clues that I'm speaking of have been checked to make sure that they were there in 1982 and before. So the whirring, that's what we can suggest from right now. So going further in, take twice as many steps as the hour or more. This is a big topic of a debate, because they think that these two lines go together. And I stand very, very, very firm that they do not. Or more, it's its own separate line. It stands alone. After or more, there's a period. Okay? So or more is just a transition sentence. It's saying, here's a list of directions. Or more, if you need other clues or the suggestions, here are more. That's all it's saying. It can't be, again, twice as many steps, or more, meaning 100 steps instead of 22, or 1,000,000 steps, or it just takes away from everything. So I don't understand why many people suggest it. I get how the order is and how confusing that can be. But logically, that can't be a true answer, that it's 22 steps or more. Now, to get into the nitty-gritty of the solve, I think that this puzzle is a lot like the Boston puzzle. And from what was revealed from JJP about the Boston puzzle, we have the woman's hair that looks like the baseball field. Um, and I don't think a lot of people would even got that. I'm sure that some people did, but it wasn't probably that popular. And another unpopular, but you can see where they're coming from, suggestion about New York City was that the way the woman's arms are spread out, it kind of looks like a baseball diamond, or kind of can form one from point to point to point. So with that suggestion being made, I do also feel like there's other things inside of this image that are baseball related. Putting that aside, or not putting that aside, but to add to it, we'll get into what I feel from the middle of one branch of the V is. So the V is actually half of a baseball diamond. If you take a baseball diamond and or you take anything of a diamond shape and you cut it in half, you would have two V's. So it's telling you from this point, from the middle of one branch of the V. So being that there's two branches of the V, they want you in the middle of one of those. Now that can be home plate or that can be second base. Now you can change that around and say, well, why can't the V be third base and then first base? Who says it's not? Just saying this is my suggestion. Now to look down and see simple roots. We went through roots and how it attributes to Rhapsodic man soil, but I'm also gonna make a guess. And I'm not gonna again die on a cross for this one, but I think simple roots is suggesting grass. And what the line is suggesting in context to the rest of the clues is that if you look on one side, you're going to see dirt, and if you look on the other side, you're going to see grass. And the part that they want you to dig on is, I would say, most likely going to be grass, right? That would be logical. So now we get into what I think is probably the hardest part of the verse, although we probably didn't think that because we thought him a hard word would have been the theme that got us there and solidified everything. But the arm that extends over the slender path in summer. And in summer does work with the wearing sound, and I'll explain why. And it does work with the arm that extends over the slender path. I'll go into why the wearing sound first. So the location that I've figured out, which is in Shore Road Park, which is near Fort Hamilton High School, is a baseball field. And near that baseball field, at the time that Byron Price buried the casque, next to it was a roller rink, which was very popular in the 80s, 70s, 60s in New York City. Used to play field hockey, just regular roller skates, and they used to pump music and have parties there. And then the thing that seems to be important to these lines is that in the winter it used to become an ice skating rink. So the in summer works well with that, and in summer works well with find the arm that extends over the slender path, and here's why. The arm that extends over the slender path is a pitcher's arm. What these lines are telling you to find is a pitcher's it's a pitcher's mound. So they're telling you find the arm that extends over the slender path, which is a very crude descriptive way of find the pitcher's mound. And it makes sense in summer because it is a summer sport. It starts in spring, late spring, goes right through summer, and it ends in October. So you wouldn't find that arm, well, you would still find the mound, but necessarily how the arm is active and throwing over the slender path, which the slender path being from the pitcher's mound to home base. And if you look at a field, any baseball field, you usually will see there is the slender path of dirt in the grass that goes from the pitcher's mound all the way to home plate. I believe that it's used mainly to help the pitcher guide the ball straight down or maybe it's helpful to judge it from the referee, the umpire standpoint. Not sure. I'm not a baseball fan. So that one clue in itself, I think, is something that I've maybe heard once after I kind of suggested it. I'm not saying that person took it from me, but I think they had the same idea. I've not heard many people express that idea, but I think that is the crucial part to solving this verse. Where that leads you might be different from where it led me. So I'll leave it at that with what that clue means or what location it is. Because at this point is where I'm going to make the argument that the verse stops and the image begins. Now I can go into where I think, and I'm going to go into it briefly without getting too descriptive, but the way this verse is broken down is in two parts. The or more, like I said, which is that transition sentence, is what separates one half from the other half. And they're both giving you directions to the same place, except the first set of directions actually has some place for you to move, which is east 22 steps from a certain point, which I believe is a pitcher's mound. So that being said, the or more would be from the middle of one branch of the V, look down and see simple roots in Rhapsodic man's soil, or gaze north towards the Isle of B. But nowhere in there does it say walk somewhere, take a left, or anything. There's no movement. So this is saying from the perspective of somebody who's already there, or this is basically saying, look, this is where it is. And for you to know where this is, I'm going to give you these clues, which is you can see the Isle of B from here. The Rhapsodic man's soil part, again, not so much for the Gershwin, but because there's soil and there's also grass, the simple roots. So again, two parts of the verse. One is asking you to actually have movement, and the other one isn't because it's right on the casque. That's that. So this is where I think it is. As I put in my disclaimer, do not try to go to any of these locations in Shore Road Park. And Shore Road Park is pretty long. It spans all the way from Owl's Head Park down to the Verrazano Bridge. This park has been hit several times, probably as far as I can see, the last 6 years, 7 years, it's been hit several times by hunters that go there, and they're very reckless. They make holes. They don't clean up after themselves. They leave things a mess. Some people have gotten caught. I believe I know of 3 incidents and people that have been arrested and fined, court dates, the whole 9 yards, and they went through a really rough situation in the process of getting arrested. The neighborhood and the neighbors and the police are all very much aware of the secret of Treasure Hunt. None of them that I know of are participating. I could be wrong. Obviously, there actually are a few natives of this neighborhood that are participating. But in general, they hate this because of the vandalism that has occurred in the name of it. So my suggestion is that if you're going to do anything in this park, you get permission, whether that permission be from a groundskeeper or some sort of law enforcement or a permit department, a parks department. I don't know. That's up to you, really. I guess that's it to sum it up. I mean, feel free to leave any questions that you have about the spot. I will do a follow-up video in which we'll have the other people that have came with me on the hunt and contributed to the solve and image matches, which I will show later. We will have them on and we'll have a group discussion, and we'll be able to answer any questions that are posed here or any criticisms, which both are welcome. So with that being said, I think I'm going to leave it off. Hopefully, the video wasn't that long. It's 24 minutes, and hopefully the audio is good. Hope you guys got something out of it, and especially about the method of how the puzzle is done. What are the similarities? What is the overall framework and system of how to do these things? And hopefully there is something in what I've said that, one, makes you think that these words are literal. They're figurative language, yes, but then the words are not metaphors. So that really eliminates so many of these bad possibilities that get posted and people annoy us with. Because I'm not the only person that's annoyed, let's be honest. So with that being said, be literal with this. And also, the verse is not broken into different pieces, and there's a path that you have to go to this place first and this place first. Please realize that in most of these verses, at most, they're asking you to take 7 steps or 5 steps, or they're not asking you to take any steps, because where they're standing and from where they're writing this verse and talking to you is the casque site. They're looking around while standing at the casque site, probably on top of the casque, and telling you what's around them. And I think if you keep those perspectives in mind when you read the other verses, they become a lot easier, because there's not all these, well, anything's possible. It could be that, it could be this. It eliminates all those questions. And hopefully you're inspired to do the logical things with those questions and those conundrums that we have, and we make some progress. Now, I will always hold firm also that the reason why casques have not been found is not because the answers are so hard to figure out, that the images are so cryptic. I think it is very simple, and JJP was right by keeping it simple. The problem is going to be digging. Maybe in 1982, 84, 85, 89, maybe somewhere even in the 90s, especially in New York, you could have got away with digging and nobody would have said much to you. That definitely would have been cops trying to get you and find you. I sincerely thought they would have cared. But this is definitely different times. We have to keep that in mind. And trying to dig a hole that is as big as the Chicago hole that was needed, or trying to dig around in a planter like the Cleveland guys did for however long it was. I believe it was several hours. These are opportunities that are not going to be granted to us. And trying to sneak around and do this is very difficult. Nonetheless, trying to sneak around, do it while finding a needle in a haystack, which is a casque under unknown amount of dirt, because we also have to attribute for whatever's been put on top of it since then, or erosion, or whatever the case may be. So let's keep in mind that, and let me suggest that most of the answers to these verses, most of the answers to the image matches, most of the answers to how the system and the framework is, have already been answered. They're already there. I think that it makes the puzzle very boring for people, because it's mostly complete. That's 50%, 60% complete, except for the ones that haven't been solved. And since that is boring, we try to recreate this in an image that we find more appealing, or that we think the audience is going to find more appealing. That's great and dandy. And if you want to play that game, that's totally your prerogative. You can go whichever way you want. But I am of the camp that wants to actually find these things, because I get a high out of seeing it. I get a high out of knowing that this was something that Byron Price put on the ground and hoped that somebody would give, excuse my language, that somebody would give a fuck and try to find. Because to be honest, his book didn't sell very much. And I'm sure by the time those Cleveland searches came to him, as they said, he really had given up. He really didn't care about the book that much. You know, he calls his losses on that one. And to say that after his death, the book becomes, I think, probably much more popular than he would have imagined. So I want to solve a puzzle. Not really interested in the song and dance and the emotions. And it's nice to make friends, and it's nice to have people to talk to about this and share like-minded things. But I think this is exactly how we solve it. And good luck to everybody. I do hope that there's more casques to be found to solidify these ideas and patterns. And hopefully I will see you with a casque. We are still going to attempt to get one, even though we have gone through this much trouble with working with some people. So it's not an illegal dig or anything that anybody will get in trouble for. So we will keep you guys posted. And maybe hopefully by the meetup, we'll have something to show you guys. Or maybe this would be an activity after the meetup. Who knows? We'll keep that open and talk to you guys soon.